everybody, welcome back to my workshop and welcome back to my garage. What we're going to go over in today's video is getting the guitar to this point right here. It's really starting to look like a guitar now with the two main pieces together. I'm really happy with it so far. So what we're doing in this video is getting the fretboard glued on, getting the fret slots cut, getting the fretboard radius glued on, routing the neck pocket, getting the neck fitted in. It was a little bit of work to get the neck joint and everything right, but let me see if I can get it in here for you. You can see how it is. I mean, that came out super clean. I still got to clean up this area just a little bit, or some of the wood where it was really thin, and but I'll clean that up as I sand it off. But I couldn't be happier with the way that neck joint is. Once this thing glues up, it's going to be almost invisible on that, so that's great. The fretboard came out super nice. Still got a little bit of final tweaking to do on the truss rod adjustment, the access hole for that. I'm going to work on that. I've got a couple thoughts in mind on what I'm going to do with that, but let's get rolling and make some sawdust. All right, everybody, so next on the agenda is we're going to start working on the fretboard and the neck. So far with the neck, as we've shown in past videos, we've got basically the outline of the neck cut. We've got the headstock shape cut in. We've got the carbon fiber reinforcement rods put in the neck. We've got the truss rod slot cut. So one thing I did do off camera is I went ahead and used some chisels to open up this area right here to accept the truss rod spoke wheel adjustment. And I'll show that on the other neck when I start prepping that neck. I've also got my fretboard. As shown in previous video, I already have this thickness down to 1/4 inch, just slightly over 1/4 inch. So basically, to establish my center line, I just took my marker and went in from the edge on both sides, on the top and the bottom, equal distance, and went ahead and connected that with the center line. That gouging that's in the fretboard there, that's actually in the waist area of the fretboard. So when I cut the fret slots, when I cut the nut, where it's going to go into the nut, and when I cut the last fret and the overhang there, that waste material will be discarded. So to cut my frets, I'm going to be using my Stumac fret slotter, and I've got the templates that go with it for all the different scales. So I've marked the center lines on this as well. So what I'll do with some masking tape and super glue is I'm going to go ahead and attach the fretboard down to this, aligning the center lines with each other. That way, as I feed this through the fret slotting jig and cut the fret slots, my fret slots are going to be perpendicular to the center line. And that way I'll know I'll have a true fretboard going forward. So let's go ahead and do some super glue and masking tape here. Get this thing down and prepped, and let's get some fret slots cut. All right, now you can see I've got my second line here where I reestablished, and it's lining up perfectly with the line there on the center line of the template, and the same here. It's lining up perfectly with the center line on the template. So now what I can do is I can feed this through my jig and start cutting the fret slots. So what I've done is I got my fret slotting jig clamped down to the table so it's nice and secure. And what I'll do is I'll feed it through this way. The first cut I'm going to make is going to be for the nut line, and then I'll cut the individual frets. The nice thing about this is there's a pin inside here, so it drops down and locks into what you're doing. And then you have these little plates right here that clamp the board down so it doesn't move on you. So now I'm in the plate, clamp down there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and clamp down here as well. That clamps the edge of the template. That holds everything in place. Now that's nice and secure. These guides pinch in and hold the saw secure, so it holds the saw straight. And they also have height adjustments on them to where I can raise them or lower them to allow me to set my depth for my fret slots. Now that one's cut, what I can do is I just loosen these. And feed it through to the next slot. There we go. Only 21 more to cut. All right, so what I've done is I've used my template for the Explorer from Maximum Guitar Works, and I laid it on there and I marked out my center line as normal, and then I went ahead and marked my fret locations, or my fret marker locations, just with a brad tip bit down through the hole and a tap just to put an impression down on the fretboard. So now that I've got my inlaid dots drilled in a little bit deeper to where they're not going to disappear when I radius my fretboard, and I've got the fretboard slimmed down just a touch to where it's inside the radius block, and it's taped down to my table. The radius block's from Maximum Guitar Works. This one's a 12-inch radius. That's the one I prefer. You can, when you order it, you can get them in whatever radius you want. So what I've got right now is I've just got 80 grit paper on it. So I want to kind of get this down pretty quick to the spot, and then once I get it closer, then I'll go ahead and switch to like 120 and 240 to get it smoothed out a little bit. And it's nice, you can kind of see what where you're going as it's going through the wood. It kind of gives you a better idea on where you have and haven't sanded. And as I get closer, what I'll do is I'll just some pencil lines on here and continue to sand like that. All right, what I'm going to do now is I'm getting closer, so I'm going to go ahead and pull the 80 grit paper off. I've got actually some 180 on here. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to get the fretboard cleaned. Then I'm going to draw some new lines on it. Right down the center, because I know the ends are getting better, about where they need to be, and it's the center that still needs just a touch of work. So, all right. So what I've got now is just a fresh piece of 220, and just going to make a few passes, just kind of get those scratches out. All right, that's going to be it. Let's do one last check, make sure we're still at 12, and then any final adjustments will be done after I get this on the fretboard, or after I get it glued to the neck. Perfect. Nice 12 radius all the way down the neck. Polish down to 220. And what I'll do, like I said, I'm going to go ahead and when I put the inlays in, that's when I'll do my final polishing and everything and get that. That way the inlays are in and ready for frets. So I've got my truss rod. I've made sure it adjusts. Basically I put it in the neck, and then with the turn wheel adjusted it, and so I know it moves both ways, so that's good. I've now got it set in a neutral position. As you can see, it drops in and it's nice right below the surface of the channel, so that's perfect. Then what I like to do, it's not necessary, it's not, you know, you don't need to glue your truss rod in, and that's not what I'm doing when I do this. But what I like to do is I always like to put a couple drops of glue in the channel, and that way it just stops the fretboard from rattling. Just put a little bit at one end and a little bit at the other. And this is a flexible adhesive. I'm not putting a lot there, I'm just putting enough to keep the fretboard, or keep the truss rod from rattling when it's in the guitar. Because nothing you'd want worse than to sit there and discover that you have a rattle at a certain frequency when you're playing. Alright, so that's in. That's ready to go. In preparation for gluing, I want to make sure that I have a good clean surface. So I'm just going to take some naphtha and clean this up. That is a nice fretboard though. I really like it. It's nice straight good grain rosewood. Looks really nice. Gonna give that a few minutes to dry, and then we can look at moving forward with the neck, getting the neck glued on. In preparation for that, I have my clamps, I have my wax paper set up. I've got my clamping caul for the top of the fretboard because it's already radiused. So I'm just gonna let this naphtha dry, and then we'll get to gluing. All right, so what I've got done is I went ahead and got the fretboard lined up, dry fitted. I'm straight at the top, lined up with my center line, or at the bottom, and lined up with my center line at the top, and just did cover the nut line, so I know I'm right where I need to be there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill 2 pilot holes through the fret slot into the neck. That way I can stick some toothpicks in there as indicator pins. Now I know that I've got my truss rod and then my carbon fiber rods, and I know I can drill 12 millimeters from the center line of the neck safely, and I've got it set up so I don't go very deep. And the reason why I'm doing it in the fret slot here is because what'll happen is when I put the fret in, the fret will cover it. There's one. And then down here I don't have to worry so much because it's in the heel of the neck, so it's not going to go anywhere. So I don't have to worry about hitting anything here. There we go. By drilling those two holes now, what I can do is I can drop toothpicks in there and put the fretboard down in, and that way I know it's not going to move when I glue it up. And so you can see where I drilled that hole right there, just on the outside of my carbon fiber rod. And then what I'll do is I'll just trim the ends of the pin off, and it'll be a nice snug fit. Then what I do is I leave the points on. That way it helps me line up the fretboard going in to there. And that way I can just press my fretboard down. When the time comes, just line it up, drop it down, and I know it's going to be a perfect alignment. So when I clamp it in, it's going to be good to go. People tend to use a lot of glue or looking for a lot of squeeze out. The more glue you use, you know, if you go over what you need, is the more you got to clean up when the time comes. So there we go. And I just like to make sure I get the glue all the way out to the edges. That way I know when the time comes. Oops. Don't need to get glue there, do I? Definitely don't want to get glue down in my truss rod slot there. So, and what I've done is I've kind of marked where my end of the fretboard is going to be. And this is going to give a nice glue surface. There we go. Got a little bit of room for squeeze out, etc. around the fretboard. And we're just going to go ahead and get this on and glue it up and clamp it up. Trim these off. What I like to do is I just like to start all my clamps. Yep, and got good squeeze out all the way along, and I haven't even tightened them that much yet. You don't want to tighten them, torque them right down, because then what you end up doing is squeezing all the glue out. But you do want it in enough to where it's going to actually hold everything and compress it and give it that clamping action that it needs. As you can see, I got good squeeze out all the way down, just the slightest amount. That's all you need. You don't need to make a mess. And here as well. I went ahead and took the neck out of the clamps, glued up really well for the fretboard. I'm getting ready to trim it down flush now with the router. What I've done is I've just put some tape on the front of my fretboard because, like I said on the previous video, or earlier in this video, I'd actually sanded this down to 220, and I just want to make sure I don't get any dings or any scratches or anything like that in it. So when I'm running it across the router table, I just went ahead and put some tape on it just to be safe. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and route the sides. I've already measured for thickness as well, and it's about right where I want it to be. A little bit thinner. At the first fret, I'm 0.89 inches, and at the 11th fret, I'm 0.95 inches, which is pretty close to that 59 Les Paul profile that I'm looking for. So when I go to round this out and when I go to carve the neck, I'm going to pay attention to that and keep those dimensions in mind as I carve the neck, because that's what I'm looking for, is that 59 era Les Paul feel. That's my favorite neck profile. So we're going to go from there, but right now let's go ahead and get these sides routed. I've already got the bed in. It's got a bearing on the top of it that'll ride against the edge of the neck, and that'll trim this fretboard right down smooth with the neck. All right, that did the trick. Nice and smoothed out with the neck. So now that I've got the fretboard trimmed down level with the side of the neck, what I want to do now is I want to make sure that the neck and the body fit is going to be where it's going to be at. That way I can make any adjustments to the neck heel to get the angle right and everything like that, because it's getting that time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start routing the body for the neck pocket. That's all I'm going to put in right now is just the neck pocket. I want to make sure the neck fits in there the proper way. And then I've got the right spacing now that I have my bridge. I can put my bridge flat on here to make sure that I've got the correct break angle on the neck, because now's the time to start adjusting that before I do the shaping and everything on the neck. I want to make sure that I got a good neck fit to the body. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to put a Forstner bit in my drill press, and I'm going to take out some of this material here before I put the router to it, just to make the router have a little bit less work to do. All right, so what I've done is I have my depth line set here. So you can see I'm still about a 1/4 inch to go with routing when I go down in there. I just didn't want to go too far with the drill press. Plus, it's got the point on the Forstner bit that pokes down in, so I didn't want that going deeper into the body. So I'll clean the rest of that up with the router. The same with some of this. I'll go ahead and remove some of these pieces here before I put the router on. But I'm inside my template line. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead, clean this up just a little bit, get the template glued down to the body, masking tape and super glued down to the body, and we'll be ready to start routing out that neck pocket. All right, so what I've got is I'm actually using my Maximum Guitar Works template for the Explorer, because that's the neck profile that I used. So what I'm going to do is I've got this set. Like I said, I've already hogged out some material. I know I need to go 1.2 inches deep, so I do have my micrometer locked in to the correct depth, so I'll know when I get there. Right now I'm just going to take off this little bit, clean it up a little bit. So eventually I'll have to remove the template to get down deeper, because I don't have a router bit that's 1.2 inches deep that can go that deep. So I'll have to route it and then remove the template, and then let the walls of the neck pocket, let that ride the bearing to finish the rest of it. All right, so just to give you a look here real quick, what I've got is it's not as deep as it needs to be yet, but it's cleaned out. I do have about a 1/4 inch that the template didn't go forward to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay some flat pieces down on top of here, use that to extend out and route that last little bit out of the lip. And then I'll be able to use the inside of the cavity as my bearing guide to go through that. So we're going to get rolling on that, and I'll bring you back in a little bit. All right, just getting ready to do the final passes with the router. I've almost got it to the correct depth. I've went ahead and increased the depth on my bit just a touch. All right, so here's the neck pocket all routed in. It's cut to the correct depth, 1.2 inches. My feeler gauge my depth gauge goes right in there. Perfect. And I think that's going to do good. The neck is super, super tight. I tried fitting it when it was a little bit shallower. So what I'm going to do is just down the sides of the neck with my straight edge, I'm just going to take a couple passes with the straight edge sandpaper to smooth the sides of the neck a little bit and to get it to drop into the pocket. All right, folks, well, that's going to wrap up this video. Got a lot of work done. We're to the messy stages now. What I've got left to do on the body is reestablish the center line, make sure the center line's still where it should be with the neck being in the neck pocket now, and that's adjusted. It looks good from just the initial look I did, but I'll put my laser on it to make sure it's good there. And then I'll run some straight edges down the sides, reestablish the center line for establishing my bridge and my pickup routes. I have decided I'm going to go with 2 P90s on this because of the neck pocket, or the overhang where the neck goes into the body. That's just kind of unsightly. I don't like a pick guard, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put an extra P90 in there, and that way I'll have my 2 P90s in the guitar. That's going to go out really well. So if you like what I'm doing, please click like, click subscribe. Keep up with the channel as we go forward with this guitar and its sister guitar that's going to be made. It's another LP Junior. This one I'm going to do with a maple cap on it, a mahogany body with a maple cap. You've already seen the neck. I still got some work to do on that neck, as well as the ebony fretboard for that one. So still got some work to do, but we got a lot of stuff coming to the channel. I really appreciate all the support I've been getting. I've actually got over 100 subscribers in the past 3 months, so I'm really happy about that. I'm really stoked about that. Trying to get to 500 right now, my goal, and then after that I'm going to put my goal up to 1,000. So please, again, thank you very much for tuning in, and until next time, take care.